What's going on, everybody? Fedor here from 3D Print SOS. Welcome back to the channel. And in today's video, we finally got open source firmware for the Creality K1 Max and Creality K1. Super exciting. Should have been done earlier, but that's okay. We have it now and I'm very excited. And why I'm making this video is because I've seen, especially on the Facebook groups, that a lot of people are confused as to why you'd want to use this or what was the purpose, what some of the features are. They just don't understand the use case. And I asked around and people said that they want to see more videos on this type of thing. So I have already took some of my own liberties and installed some fun stuff on the Creality K1 Max, but now I want to do it to my Creality K1, and I figured instead of just doing it by myself, let's do it together. That way I can go over all the features, some of the things that I specifically install on mine, what I like, what I don't like, and then of course how to do it. And then that way you can decide whether you want to do it for yourself and maybe gain some kind of understanding on what the reasoning for this is. Originally when Creality released these machines, we had absolutely no control over them. And something along those lines is usually good for a beginner until something potentially goes wrong, or you might want to recalibrate in certain aspect of the machine. Maybe you're going between filament manufacturer and type to another filament manufacturer type and something's not quite right and you want to just adjust your extruder, something like that. But with the Creality's original firmware, you just can't do it. You don't have access to any kind of calibration. So one thing that this does is it gives you all control. You don't need to use any of it, but when you do, or if you do, it's all there, and that's really important. It gives you, I guess, the power to use the tool that you went and purchased. So that's the main reason of why I enjoy these type of things. So let's just get down into it. I'm gonna go ahead and get down to my browser here. And what you're seeing here should be a familiar site. This is the Creality Print front end, and this one is on my Creality K1. So let me just go over the screen here and I'll show you the difference between this and my already rooted open sourced Creality K1 Max that's running fluid. Here is Creality Print. Here you can see on the top left here, if you had a print going right now, you would see some of that information right over here. We have our camera that you see here in real time. You have some very basic toggles here that just on off some of the fans and the lights, things of that nature. We can home the machine. We just have a very basic level of communication with the machine. Here's all the files that are on there. Here you can control the hot end and nozzle, and those are the only things you see on the graph. And then I'm probably going to be blocking it, but here is your bed level information in a graph form. And you can clear that data so that you can do another bed mesh, although if you do another bed mesh, it just overwrites this anyway. But as you can see, you can't really do much, not that you necessarily need to most of the time when using these machines. However, this is all that you get. Now let me show you the difference between this and something like the fluid interface. So keep in mind, this is almost an identical machine. This is just the Creality K1 Max, but this is the fluid front end. And the main real difference is you have to add a couple more numbers to the IP address to get here after it's rooted and installed, of course. But here is the general layout here, and you can rearrange this layout as well over here in settings, as well as changing the colors, the theme, so on and so forth, the name. You can do all kinds of fun stuff. But here you have your camera to which you can go full screen. You can even set up multiple cameras if you can hook more cameras up to the machine. Here we have our basic charts, and you can see you have the MCU and the chamber temperature on here as well as your other ones in this graph. So pretty much the same thing there. Here we have controls as well, but a little bit more control over those basic controls, and very simple way to use them here, as well as just, you know, a very easy way to control your speed, your pressure, advance your flow, things like that. This is probably one of the main things that that you get here is you get the console, which you can put in G-code, and this means you can do anything that the machine is able to read. You can calibrate and do anything that the machine can do with simple commands right in here in the console. So that's very, very important, and probably the most important part of this entire interface. Here you can see your jobs in more detail, although some little settings here, like making these thumbnails large, like I personally like them, is hidden away from you, but that's not a big deal. You still get everything you need here. Here's another really big perk of this firmware is you have these awesome pre-made macros that are set up for you. And if you look a little bit closer here, by the way, you can categorize these if you wanted and really set them up however you want it on the screen. But if you take a closer look, you can see a lot of camera settings that you just do not have on the other machine. So if this is a little bit too dark for you, or it's a little bit too bright because of some of the settings that you have, I mean, because of some of your lights that you have in your room, you can actually make adjustments, as well as just calibrations that you can set up, that you can do right here through these really simple buttons. So this is kind of a major step in the right direction, just through these macros that you have full control over. You also have fan and outputs here, but the difference is you have literally, you could set this to any number essentially, and then your power limits, such as how fast your machine is going to be moving, things like that are all right here in this interface. If you want it, you definitely don't have to use it. Some of the other things here is you have a history of all of your jobs, or here you go, here's the history of the entire machine. As you can see, I only have 36 hours since this firmware was put on here. You can tune your bed to a little bit more of a degree. You can set up multiple profiles if you wanted to. You can control your end stops and your filament runout sensors there. And then your configuration. This is another, probably the most important section here, is this file right here, the printer configuration file. And like I said, you don't need to use this, but if you wanted to, it's all here. This is how your firmware runs on this machine. Everything in here that's outlined in here is essentially every pin on the board, every address, every single setting that the machine uses, it's all here. So if you wanted to change something, or you needed to change something, all you have to do is change the number in the proper area, or the setting in the proper area, then hit save and restart. And when your printer restarts, that setting, that firmware is already running and updated. So as you can see, there's some extra stuff here that we will be adding to the other machine as well. But that is just the tip of the iceberg of what you can do with Klipper and with this interface. So one of the other things that Creality did was the way that they installed this firmware is done in a slightly older way that makes installing other things like those macros and things like that just a little bit harder. And because of that, I saw that a user, saying his name is going to be tricky. Let's see if I can try it. Guilouz? Maybe? I don't know. But thank you, Sir Guilouz. And actually, there's two contributors here. We have Kerbo as well. Thank you both for making this easy for us. But essentially here, there is a helper script, and I'll have a link down in the description for this. That's already set up for you and makes it really easy to use. So right here, there's a link for the wiki, and everything is outlined here. It's how to set all this up, how to do all this, and we'll just start at the top and I'll explain how to do it. So the first thing you need to do is install the latest firmware. So before the announcement, I think it was last week, this firmware was actually available, but you would have to put this onto a USB drive and follow these instructions on how to install it on the machine. However, as far as I understand at the moment, you can get this at least 1.3.2.1 directly on the machine, just like you would any other over-the-air update. So head over to your machine and check the settings there to see your version. If there's a little icon there that's glowing, you can click it and do the update, or you can follow these instructions on how to get this firmware directly from Creality and installed onto your machine. Essentially, after you do that, you're going to have to jump through and calibrate the machine to get back to the settings, and you know, it does it all for you, so that part's pretty easy. Then to actually enable it, it's not actually enabled until you go to your little settings here, go to root access information, you go to this page right here, the warning. You have to click that you have read and accepted this. You have to wait the 30 seconds that hides this OK button. After that, it'll bring you to here where it gives you your account, which is going to be root, and your password, which is Creality_2023. After you see the screen, only then will the rooted firmware be open, I guess. And it's done this way so that you don't accidentally mess something up. So I fully understand why they did this. But here it is. You have to go through this to get there. So pretty straightforward so far. A firmware update, just getting the password and the actual account on the screen, and you should be good to go there. All right, so the next thing we need to do is install the script, the actual helper script. It just makes installing everything that we're gonna do much easier, so we're gonna stick to it. All right, so let's just follow along and get to where we need to get. So the first thing you need to do is use that other information that we got, the account and the password, to SSH into your machine. There's lots of ways to do it. You can search this on Google depending on if you have a Mac or PC, whichever software you'd like to use. I'm just gonna go ahead and use Terminal to get into mine. The way we do it is we type in SSH-P22, then we do the account, which in this case is root, and then the IP address of the machine that you're trying to SSH into, and we are going to be doing it on my Creality K1 here. As you can see up top here, the address ends with 192. So we are going to go ahead and jump into that and ask for the password. It is Creality_2023. And there we go. If you see this little symbol, that means we are rooted and ready to go. Time to go back into here. There's going to be some commands that you need to do in order to make this happen. So it's just a matter of copy and pasting and making sure it does the installation. All this is doing is it's going to grab from this particular website this installer script, and it's going to do it really quickly. There you go. So now you have the script onto your machine. Let's go and get this one. We're going to need to update it manually, it says. Let's see what it does. It's going to make sure it's the latest one. Okay, it is. We're good. Let's see. And then we're going to just run it. So let's go back again and run the script. And there we go. We are in it. Let me see if I can make this a little bit taller to make it easier. So very easy to use here. You just look at this interface and type in what you want to do. So first things first, we are going to go to 1 and we are going to install. Let's see what I want to install. The first things first, we're going to install Fluid, and that's going to open it on port 4408. I'll explain what that is later, but we're going to do 2. Okay, Fluid is already installed on my particular machine. But that's okay. So it will just basically run back, it will basically install Fluid if it needs to, and then just jump back into the screen. I'm choosing to do Fluid. You can definitely choose Mainsail if that's something you prefer. You can even install both of them. They're not going to interfere with each other. All you have to do is either use port 4408 at the end of your IP address or for 4409. You can even, like I said, run them side by side. That part won't matter. The other thing you need is Moonraker and Nginx, and obviously if I hit 1 here, it's going to say I already have it installed, because if I had Fluid, I had those 2 things installed. And then you see how there's a little gap between 3 and 4. The rest is kind of like the less important but the fun stuff that you can add. So for example, you can add the time-lapse configuration for Moonraker. The other thing is number 5. Number 5 we actually need. So Entware is the thing that allows you to more easier install packages onto your machine, since these machines are running a certain version of Linux that makes it a little bit harder to install things. Like for example, if you wanted to install something on a typical Raspberry Pi Clipper machine, you would just be able to follow and copy and paste a tutorial online and then put it in. But not on these machines. You have to do them a little bit differently, and that's why this script exists, and that's what makes it much easier. So some of these installs are going to take a little bit of time. I'm gonna fast forward this until it's done, and I'll get back to you in a second. I'll do that with all of them if they are going to take their time. And you'll know they're done is when this screen that we're looking at right over here goes back to the menu. All right, let's install this. Oh, there we go. We didn't even have to skip. All right, so now Entware is installed, which makes it a little bit easier for us a little bit later. So Mobile Raker Companion, which is number 6, that's a cool one. That's you being able to access all of Moonraker or Fluid, all that stuff on your phone, so that you don't have to just use a browser-based thing. You can use it anywhere. You can connect directly to it in that way. I personally have never used it, but I know a lot of people really like it, and it's there. Number 7 is very important, and I want it. I think I already installed it, but we're going to figure it out together. So Clipper Adaptive Meshing and Purging is probably one of my favorite things that gets installed onto Klipper. It's called KAMP for short, and essentially what it does is instead of meshing the entire bed before every single print, this does it adaptively. So as an example, on the K1 Max, if you wanted to print a benchy, which is tiny and goes in the center of the bed, you don't have to do the entire calibration. It will just calibrate just the bed area of where the benchy is and then print your benchy, so that you don't have to wait extra time for the entire bed to be meshed if you're not going to be using the bed. Let's say you needed to print something that's just an L shape, you don't need to do the rest of the calibration. It would just do that area and that would be done. Whoops, I hit the wrong button. Sorry about that. All right, so we are going to install KAMP, which is 7. Let me just double check to make sure it's the right one. Yes, I want to install that. There we go. So let's install KAMP, and well, I was going to skip it, but that is super fast yet again. And it gives you instructions, by the way, on what to do with each one of these things. So let's go ahead and do this. So in order to install KAMP officially, you have to add this to the printer CFG of the machine. So what that means is, first, let's go to our fluid interface, and that's going to be our IP address :4408. There we go. Now you see the Creality K1. It's all the same stuff, except we are already in the fluid interface. So let's go to configuration. We're going to go to print, and you can see KAMP's already installed here. We're going to go to our printer CFG. I like to go to the very top where all the other includes are, and we are just going to hit spacebar. We're going to put this in here. Let's get rid of the space so it looks a little bit neater. Include KAMP settings, and we're going to hit save and restart. And it's going to restart the machine. It's going to reboot. You're going to get some errors until all of that is settled, but then you will jump right back in. There we go. So once your machine is fully rebooted, it'll just jump in by itself, and we are good to go. So let's go into KAMP settings here, and this gives us a couple things. These are the settings for KAMP that we want. So smart parks, we're not going to be able to use that really because we don't have a sensor that parks itself, but I do want to use the line purge, and I do want to use adaptive meshing. So I'm going to go ahead and copy these things. I'm going to go back and go to the printer config, and we're going to paste those two in because I want those things on my machine, and I'm going to hit save and restart. Okay, there we go. So we'll hit X, we'll go back, and now KAMP should be installed. It is that easy. Let's go back to here. Okay, let's see what else there is. I do want the camera settings, so that will be the final thing we install. Let's go ahead and do 12. Please install Klipper code GCAM. Okay, so that's what it's for. Okay, let's go ahead and install that as well. It's just another way for us to be able to install certain things that we couldn't before. Because of the Linux install that Creality chose. All right, and then finally we're going to install 12. Yes. It's going to restart them. There we go. And it tells us what to include into our printer config. Let's go back to Klipper config, and we will install it into our includes area, save, and restart. And as you can see here, it actually added the configuration file camera settings. So you can click into here, check it out. There's a ton in there, but that's not what I'm interested in. I'm interested in all the macros. All right, there we go. Let's go back to home up here. And now if we scroll down, we have all of these things. So let's check out cam brightness. So let's make this 10, send. All right, and let's make it 20. Send. There you go. So as you can see, that is changing, and obviously we don't want it that bright, but you can play around with this. There is a ton of camera settings now, so you can tweak it exactly to how you like it. There's also a bunch of other stuff, and like I said, to categorize this, you go into settings, you scroll down here to all of your macros, and you can click into each one and categorize them and place them wherever you'd like. So if you want just the camera section in here, you can do that. Makes it really easy, and I actually recommend you doing that because it'll help you you don't have to look through all of this. But that is actually not one of the more important things that I personally wanted this for. All right, so all of that is fun and everything, but there is actually one more glaring issue with the Creality K series machines, and that has to do with its input shaper. And some of you that have these machines might have noticed this already and seen some topics about it, at least online. But what this does is when the machine does its input shapers, that's when it shakes the print head violently, makes all that noise, and then configures itself. It takes one of the X or Y, I don't remember off the top of my head which ones, we'll find out in a second which ones. It takes just the one axis figure and puts them on both. And the problem with that is those values need to be different because the weight of the X axis is not the same as the Y axis when it moves about. So that is one of the other things this can do for us. So let's go ahead and jump back in and make sure that we tackle that with this machine as well. So let's go back here, improvements, here we go. So there's all sorts of improvements in this section that I didn't even notice before. So there's a way to how to calibrate your extruder, how to improve your fan control, how to improve the bed mesh, lots more useful macros. But the one that we really need here is this one, and that is fix issue with input shaper. This gives you a perfect explanation as to why and how, probably a better explanation to what I was just giving you. But as you can see here, what it's doing is it's just calculating one and unfortunately putting the same one under both the X and the Y. So here is how we fix it. So we need to go into the macro G-code auto-tune shapers, G-code macros. Okay, here we go. So right over here we have auto-tune shapers. So let's see what we need to do in this section. Okay. And comment line variable auto tune. Whoa, how did I even do that? Okay, I can zoom like that. Okay, we learn something new every day. Variable auto tune shapers EI like that. So we just need to put a pound symbol like this right in front of it, and that comments it out. Okay, so we're gonna do that. Then we need to go down to the macro input shaper, and it looks like this. And it says replace the line shaper calibrate Y by shaper calibrate. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, here it is. So macro input shaper, and we need to find this right here, shaper calibrate axis Y. Let's go ahead and double check. Shaper calibrate axis Y by shaper calibrate. So we're just literally going to get rid of axis Y right here. Okay. So let's go ahead and the way, by the way, you can also do this, copy this, paste it, make sure this is on the same line because that does matter. I'm going to remove it on this one, and this one I'm just going to put a comment like that so it comments it out, but that way I know that I've made that change and I'll be able to do it, you know, to revert back if I really needed to for some reason. All right, so we did that. This allows the resonance test to be launched by the printer. Okay, cool. Add this macro to the bottom of the test manually. Okay, we are gonna take that, go to the very bottom here, right here, to space. We're gonna add this. Okay, so now we have another one called input shaper. Then click save and restart. Save and restart. We're gonna just wait for it to do its thing. Let me see what the rest says. Now run input shaper, measure the X and Y resonances, and then hit save config. Okay, and this is how you can actually view it. But what this will allow us to do is to see whether it made that change, and I'll show you how to do that as well in a second. So here's the thing. When we go back to printer config and go down to input shaper, this is typically on the very bottom, right over here, right here. So we can see our input shaper is the same on both X and Y, and we just did that fix. So here's what we're gonna do. Let's do the test, right? So we're gonna run input shaper on our machine. Let's run input underscore shaper. There we go. So it's gonna say X axis is null. It's gonna move X and Y. Let's see what it starts doing. And I'll fast forward to all the bits that take a while, just so that it's convenient. All right, and as you can see now that everything is homed, it is testing the axis labeled X. And it is doing the resonance frequency. Whoops, I scrolled a little too much. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna wait for this to finish, and then I will show you what happens afterwards. All right, Okay, so to look at all of this information that it gave us, all we have to do is just scroll up a little bit. I did see Y down there, but I'm trying to get to the X so I can take a look. So here we go. So you can see all of the input shapers that it did, and out of all those for X, it gave the recommendation of EI at 40 Hertz. And then if we scroll back down here, down to Y, let's see, right here, recommended shaper for Y is ZV at the frequency 51. So very different than what was in there. And also, they're completely two different things, because moving one thing side to side is very different than moving an entire gantry back and forth. So luckily now we have that. So the way you use this information is you can click Save Config right over here, or just type in save_config and go ahead and hit send. And what this is going to do is going to take those calculations, those recommendations, and actually apply them after a restart. So what we're going to do is we're going to wait for it to restart like we have in the past. And after these messages are all gone, there we go. There we go. We can go into our printer CFG down here, go all the way to the very bottom because that's where it stores this information. And now we can see our input shaper has the two different values. So there we go. That should be fixed. There technically should be no reason outside of, I guess, time savings and simplicity for that to be done, but input shaper is extremely valuable. The fact that it can do it right there on the machine, it doesn't take that long, although it does take some time to do the calculating and all of that. There it is. So that's how easy it is. You don't have to save again. That should be done. So those are just a few of the things that you can do with open source firmware like this. The fact that it's running Clipper, the fact that there is this awesome tool here for us to use with very clear instructions by this user who I don't want to butcher their name any further. But there you go. That is essentially what I wanted to show you, and I thought that would be valuable. So, as always, if you guys appreciated this, please go down into this area and hit that like. That seems to help a lot. Check out the Discord section for our channel. There's lots of cool things, including giveaways and contests in there, things for sale, lots of people getting help or helping others, sharing their projects, sharing their builds, all sorts of fun stuff in there. As always, there's a Patreon for this channel as well that helps tremendously. You literally pay me directly, which obviously helps. You can also become a YouTube member if you are so inclined. Get to see videos ahead of everyone else and be able to comment and chat with me directly. So, okay, hopefully this was useful to somebody. All right, as always, I'll see you all in the comments. Later.